Hello and welcome to the Powerhouse Church of God in Christ. I'm Odell, the senior pastor with our First Lady, the Frida Riley.
Hello, thank you for joining us and welcome to this week's Sunday School Highlights.
Amen. This week we're going to be talking about why are you afraid, coming from the book of Matthew, chapter 8.
All right, so get your Bibles, your commentaries, your Sunday School book, whatever you need, and let's get ready to study.
All right, welcome back to this week's Sunday School Highlights.
Yes, so we're here, and I guess it's not quite summer, but it feels like it.
Getting close.
Hot and humid and
Raining.
Painfully humid some days, especially when you're out walking.
Yeah.
You're out walking, your mind deceives you. You think you've walked 4 or 5 miles. Then you check, and it looks like maybe you've been rolling around or something instead of walking back.
Yeah, it's always interesting this time of the year because you kind of between the spring and the summer, getting a lot of, rain and things of that nature. And typically in a few months, we'll be wishing for some of this rain. So.
Yeah. So I guess we better take it and enjoy it while we have it, huh?
That's right. But,
your garden is enjoying it.
Yep. If you got a garden planted, it should be doing well with the rain.
Yes.
Hopefully you got it planted. If you don't, you better get it done pretty soon, or it's going to be a summer garden.
Yes. So his collards have done very well, although I suspect one plant is missing. I saw a hole out there one day, and I suspect one plant is missing. But tomatoes.
Yep, should be coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, they seem like they're doing very well. Peppers. Yeah, a lot of herbs. They seem like they're doing well. So
we did an herb garden last fall, I guess it was, and the problem is we're getting more herbs than we're doing anything with. So some of them are growing pretty good.
I think Tiffany used some.
Yeah, she got some the other day.
She's doing better than I am with it for sure.
In fact, we built her a little bed. Last week, and I saw some pictures of her little flower bed.
Nice.
It looked really, really well.
Nice. So they did well planting.
Oh yeah, got some tomatoes and peppers and things of that nature out there. Look very good. Look very good.
Okay.
Looked like it was professionally done.
Some city country boys. I don't know what you call it, but good. It seems like the boys are enjoying seeing the little. I want to call it produce, but it seems like it's so small, I don't know if I call it produce.
Well, we're still looking for names. If you got some names, we call it kind of the micro garden. If you got some names, I did get one person kind of give us some ideas. But if any of the rest of you, give us some ideas what you think we should call the whole effort of building the little micro gardens, if you will, little small gardens made up. We'll make standard size probably be about 4x4. We'll make some probably a little larger than that, and hopefully we'll be doing that for people in the community here pretty soon.
Nice. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we can get to the Sunday school lesson.
Okay.
Last week, we had a question. Why do you worry? I believe it's last week. Yes. Why do you worry? This week, our question is, why are you afraid? Why are you afraid?
And when you think about afraid, you think about fear, and you think about God has not given us a spirit of fear. But there are some healthy fears. There's some things that God put the emotions of fear in you for a reason.
So you can respect some things. And yes, and even in the Bible, whenever you read the word fear, you have to go back and really research it to make sure that it's not talking about respecting something, because it may be irreverent, it just may be the fear of the Lord, it's beginning of all knowledge, that sort of thing. So go back and study that. But this is, again, like why we paralyzed by fear, can't function, can't do what we're supposed to because we're so afraid.
Yeah, this is the level of fear that we're talking about. Not so much respect as you mentioned in terms of fear of the Lord, but this is more of the fight, flight, or freeze kind of fear. Fear that typically causes you to take actions almost automatically.
Just be paralyzed. Have you ever been just so afraid of something you've got to weaken the knees?
I don't think so. I can't think of anything. I've heard people talk about that. I don't know if I've ever been, I've never been in a situation where I froze. I may have been in a situation where I paused to try to understand something, but it wasn't because of fear.
Okay.
You seen the, I think it was a commercial or something where they had these people that were running and running through the neighborhood, and then they would go by people, and those people start running just because they were running, and they all be running to the same place, and then finally the last person, I guess the guy gets to his place, and all these people running behind him. They just saw him running. They looked to see what he was running from. They couldn't tell, and they just started running with him. And that's why they get to this. I think it was a convenience store or something. He was just trying to get there before the store closed, and the people were looking like they were running for their lives.
You know, if someone came running by me, especially if they said run, I'd probably run. I don't know if I'd run in the same direction. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I think it depends on where my car is or where my whatever is. I may go another direction, but I think I'm inclined to run.
Yeah. Well, you know, we start talking about this. God has created that self-defense mechanism that He put inside of us that causes us to fight, a flight, or freeze. But the fear we're talking about, when you get to that state, you act almost irrational.
Yes.
You know, it can be harmful the way you act. In fact, when you start talking about the kind of fear we're talking about, we talked about it in terms of the aggressiveness, in terms of my life may be at stake, right? But there are also low levels of fear. You
know, you can have fear placed in you from statistics, reading statistics. People, usually in my situation, you know, this happens. You can have fear from maybe subject matter experts saying something, and you take them for their word, and it is still fear. You could just have fear, maybe your parents. Just say like my mother passed away at the age of 41, and my father 65. So, you know, can have a fear of dying because I've experienced the loss of parents. So all sorts of, I guess, origins of it.
Yeah, in fact, when you mention those, some of those could be considered, if that happens to your parents, that you have a fear, say, of death, could be what you call low-level fears. And that type of stuff creates high blood pressure. It can create ulcers. It could create situations where you don't eat because you're afraid.
I give you a fear that I've heard throughout the years, that we will not have Social Security by the time we reach the age of drawing Social Security. I've heard that for a number of years. We put, paid our taxes and paid into it and that sort of thing. But that's a fear that I've heard a number of years. Fear, a healthy fear would be, well, I don't know if it's a fear or anticipation that Jesus is going to return.
And the fear would be He's coming back and you're not ready.
Yes, and that may help us to get ready. So it'd be a good fear.
Yeah.
Good fear. All right.
Okay.
So I feel like, so I had some trash, a bug actually.
I think it was an insect.
A bug was in my eye. That thing was so large I could literally pinch it out of my eye. So I feel like I got something going on this side of my face. So if anybody's watching, I'm not having a stroke or anything like that. It's just my eye is so irritated. It's so irritated.
And what happens when one of those, I call them almost like little pepper gnats. Because
did you see how large that thing was?
I did not see it. But what happens is it gets into your eye and it stings. And once it stings, your eye gets irritated. And then you're constantly thinking there's something in it. So you're rubbing it, which irritates it even more. So then you end up in this circle, right, where eyes irritated, you rubbing it.
But that thing was so big. No.
Like the fish, right?
When it's in your eye, it just seems like it's huge. But it was large enough I could literally pinch it off of the eyeball itself. So if you don't have to be concerned. I'm not having anything detrimental going on here. It's just my eyes just severely irritated.
Okay.
All right. So why you're afraid, you're not afraid. We found out you're not afraid. I'm going to tell you something. My fear would be not doing what I'm supposed to do. So my fear would be, when it comes to the Lord, my fear, and that's typically what gets me back in check. My fear would be not completing whatever my assignment is, not doing it to the best of my ability, and then somebody not getting the message. that would be my fear. I need you to get the message because after I'm gone to be with the Lord, I need you to understand some principles and to seek some things, seek the truth of some things, make sure that you know who God is and seek God. And so I guess.
Yeah, I wasn't saying I didn't have any fears. I was just saying that I've not been fears to the extent that we talked about.
Yeah,
Knees locked and can't run, that type of stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some people get weak in the knees.
Yep.
I remember one time, and Tiffany's probably going to get me. I remember one time, I think it was a raccoon. So we used to have raccoons back around the house. And I think she went to throw something into the garbage can, and I just heard her, just heard her feet, and she's running sideways. She's running sideways, so she's not talking. She's making some sort of noise, but she is not talking. And then another time something happened, and she was talking about, how she got, weak like that. But that was kind of funny. Don't mess with the raccoons. Ask Vincent.
Yeah.
Don't mess with the raccoons. Okay, so we're in Matthew and Mark and Luke, Synoptic Gospels.
Yep.
Read these three to get the complete story.
Amen. So our lesson text is going to be coming from, our Bible basically going to be coming from Matthew chapter 8, verses 23 through 27. And our Bible truth is Jesus allies the disciples' fears, and then he comes.
Allays. That's to put to rest.
Okay, allays the disciples' fears, and then he calms the storm. And our lesson aim is by the end of the lesson, we will evaluate the feeling of the disciples when a storm overtook their boat while Jesus was asleep, identify the crisis that caused the adults to worry about themselves and their families, and respond to the promised presence of Jesus in bad times as well as good times.
Yeah.
So evaluate, identify, and respond.
Okay. Of course, we'll talk about this, I guess, as we go through the lesson. This is a lesson we've heard just many times, and a lot of people are familiar with it. And sometimes it helps just to put yourself in the lesson. So we're going through the Gospels, and we may do deep dives, but I don't know. This one seems like to me is pretty. You've probably done the deepest dive that we're going to do in it with your preliminaries, but sometimes we need to be reminded of some concepts. And I think this is one of those things that the editors want us to simply be reminded. We don't have to be afraid of some things. We don't have to be paralyzed to where we can't perform and do those things that God would have us to do. We can trust God, trust Jesus in the situation. I think it's a pretty basic concept that the editors really try to get across to us. As
we start studying the lesson and start getting perspective, and we'll get to this in just a minute, but this lesson takes place at the Sea of Galilee. And I don't know if you remember when we were in Israel.
Yeah.
And we went to the Sea of Galilee, and I guess in my mind, physically being there gives me a totally different perspective when I read about it now.
So how, when you're standing there looking at it, in relation to the land, it's small. But when you're standing there looking at it, it looks like a vast body of water.
Yeah, in fact, it's the Sea of Galilee has several names as you read about it in the New Testament. It's also called the Sea of Tiberias. And it's called, there's another sea. Let's see, Sea of Galilee, Sea of Tiberias, and somewhere else they call it something else.
I was wrong. He is going deep.
Lake of Gennesaret. So, depending on which gospel you read and where you read, but all three of those are the same. It just gives you some dimensions of it. It talks about it's 41,000 acres in size.
Wow.
So that sounds pretty impressive.
It does.
It's about 12 miles north to south in length. It's about 7.5 miles east to west. So that's a big body of water. But in our culture, this would be more of a lake than a sea. Because to give you some reference, Lake Erie is 150 times larger than the Sea of Galilee.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it gives you some perspective, right?
So the Great Lakes, the 5 Great Lakes, remember we had this in? Okay. We used to study these things.
But just Lake Erie, 150 times. So now, granted, when you're standing there looking at it, you're not comparing it to Lake Erie because you're not looking at Lake Erie, right?
Right.
You're just looking at it thinking, Jesus was here on the boat, he's teaching from the lake. This is a big body of water.
Yes.
It was much bigger. It was when I looked at it, and I would say this, that in my review of it, I did conclude when we were standing there, it's more of a lake than a sea to me, because you could see the side. Even though it was a vast body of water, you could see the coast on both sides.
Oh, could you?
Yeah.
Could you?
And so
I just remember thinking how vast. I don't know. It looks huge to me, probably because I had Jordan River. You know.
That's a whole nother experience.
Yeah, it's the Jordan River, the dirty creek.
We call it a creek.
No, it was,
at least where we were at the Jordan.
it looked like a dirty
Looked
creek.
more like a creek than a river. So
A dirty creek.
So you got the Jordan River, which to us looked more like what we would call a creek. And then you had, we call it a river here, you know, we compare it to the Mississippi and things of that nature. But when you
Which
saw
is also dirty.
just much bigger and dirty. But when you looked at the Sea of Galilee, like I said, you could see the shoreline on both sides, even though it was vast. You know, it's about 12 miles, but on a clear day, you could see both sides of it. And when I think of a sea, I don't think about being able to see borders. I don't think I'll be able to see land mass on both sides.
Nice.
Then when we were there, we could see them on the side, but you couldn't see them in front of you. You couldn't see the other land on the other side.
Right,
but
right.
You could see
That's
it,
what, yeah.
left.
That's what I was
I'm
thinking.
saying left and right. I'm not saying east and west because I don't remember which direction it was.
Gotcha, yeah. But it was a good experience. It was a good experience.
And then when you read about it, having experienced that, then you have a visual to go with that. We probably got some pictures we should probably go back and put. I'm sure we took plenty of pictures.
And you think, yeah, you probably got them on your iPhone 7. And
A low blow there, huh?
well, you know, you have the most pictures on that phone. Oh my gosh, the most pictures.
It probably only goes back to 2014.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I thought your old pictures came over.
Yeah, they did. I think 2014 seemed like when I looked at it, maybe some 13, maybe not many 13,
Okay.
but probably 14. That's why you buy one a lot of memories.
Yes. Yes. And it's very difficult to ever see those pictures again. He takes them and you never see them. You just I don't know, he keeps them. I was going to talk about the Sea of Galilee. Oh, so this is what I'm thinking. There must have been a natural, what do you call it? Like the amphitheaters have this.
The water itself creates almost like a sound barrier, if you will. So when you out on the water, your voice will carry over the water because there's nothing to conduct the sound. So it carries over it.
That is amazing. Whenever you think about Jesus taking a boat and going out and talking back to the people, that is amazing.
So
now, in this case,
so if you think about it, if you got a situation where you got a flat body of water and you have banks that's coming up like that, you then naturally have a sound. Where the sound's not, the water would not absorb the sound, so it's going to travel over the sound, and the land mass behind you, if it's curved up in it, is going to trap it. So, and the reality when you think about hearing, your greatest hearing comes with your ears trapping the sound, right? Coming by you, and your ears trapping the sound.
okay, all right, he's getting really, really deep, really, really deep.
Okay, all right, okay, let's get back to that.
Okay, so there was something else. So now you have people who are in a boat, and it's 12 by, what did we say? 12 by?
Estimated that they said that somebody had dug up a boat, and they found it to be, I think they said, 25 feet long. Where did I see that? 27 feet long and 8 feet wide.
So if you're in that,
If you 12 people in there.
you're in that, and you're in the Sea of Galilee, and there's a storm. It doesn't matter if you're 1 mile from the shore or if you're 6 miles in from the shore. That can be a very scary, uncomfortable position to be in.
Yeah.
And if you, I don't know, just don't think Jesus wants you out of it. If you're not ready to die, you don't want to perish and that sort of thing, that could be scary.
Well, the thing about it is, we talked about that fear that paralyzes you. That's not a rational fear. So you don't go through the Rolodex saying, is Jesus on board? How many miracles has he performed? You don't go through
all that.
You just react, right?
Yeah. Okay. Bunch of screaming
Knees
men.
locked up. I can't run because I'm in the water, right?
You can't go. You just like if you get out the boat, you're doomed. If you stay in the boat, it's like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I want to be where Jesus is.
And then another thing, and we're gonna take a break here in just a minute. When you think about the people in this culture, I mean, being on that body of water, being on that specific body of water, would have been pretty common, because most of the people Jesus was dealing with, most of his ministry occurred in this space. So fishing was a major part of their everyday lives. So when you think about it, in fact, when the commentary was talking about, just visualize this. You got the Sea of Galilee, now all of the boats. Because if you got to go from one place to the other one, rather than walking around, the quickest way to get there is a boat across the water.
So do you think there are multiple boats out here during this storm? I heard that the storm could just kind of like...
They said it could come up from anywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So there's a possibility.
There's a possibility, but from my background and reading it wouldn't have been uncommon to see a lot of boats on the Sea of Galilee trying to get from one place to the other.
All right.
Okay. Just take a pause.
All right. We'll take a break and come right back.
I know it wasn't love. I know it wasn't love. I know it wasn't love for me. One day when I was lost, he died for the cross. I know it wasn't love for me.
Welcome back.
So go ahead and jump in there. Well, I guess before we talk about life need for today's lesson, it says people often lose confidence amidst the storm of persecution, rejection, and poverty. And you kind of called out those early when you talked about those are the things that can help people lose their confidence.
And loss.
Yep, that's right.
And loss.
Yep. It impacts people. So we pick this up, and you mentioned this. I think the Synoptic Gospel tells this story from different perspectives and cover different aspects of it. But in Matthew, as we will dive into here in just a minute, he says, and I'll be somewhere between the King James Version and Amplified. Matthew says, and when he entered into a ship, his disciples followed him. Amplified says, when he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. Now, some version, he invited them. And he said, let us go to the other side. So he made a statement, and if you think about it from a prophetic standpoint, I heard people, in fact, I heard a preacher preaching this, the fact that Jesus said, let us go to the other side.
He invites you.
Right, he invited you to go to the other side. Should have been confidence that you're going to make it to the other side. But again, when fear comes, the fear we're talking about, this kind of fear, you don't go through the Rolodex of, what did Jesus say? What specific words did he use?
But I think Jesus, whenever we look at the memory verse, I think Jesus would rather them give consideration to what it is that he said.
Oh, in fact, I think when you get into this space, part of the key part of this lesson of not fearing is to be anchored in his word enough that you consider his instructions. So you think about it, if you consider his instructions early in situations, then it helps you resolve those things. But most people don't. Most of us don't. Most of us don't go there first. We don't say, well, did he say, let's go to the other side? Or did he just say, come to the ship? Or he just said, follow him?
But we have practiced worrying for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, We've practiced that, and we have to learn to practice trusting Jesus.
Now, if you have the opportunity, right, without fear, then you can consider this. You can consider, okay, Jesus demonstrated his authority in so many different ways before he got to this point. They see where he had performed miracles, by healing the sick, cleansing lepers, casting out evil spirit. So they seen him perform these miracles that was pretty encompassing in terms of nature, in
Right.
terms of sicknesses and diseases, and that type of stuff. But again, when the fear hit them, they don't go through the roller.
They don't. It's like whenever he's feeding the thousands, and then whenever he speaks to them, and they wonder if he's talking about food, that they left the food. Okay, and behold,
Okay, go ahead.
and behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea, insomuch that the ship was covered with the waves, but he was asleep. And it's talking about Jesus.
And the Amplified said it was a violent storm arose on the sea. And in the background that you mentioned this earlier, the way this body of water was positioned with the land mass, that storms would come up quickly. It's one thing if the land is pretty much flat, then you could see a storm coming, right? But when you got it kind of trapped in this valley, sort of, the wind could come from directions,
All right.
the
All right.
east maybe, and it'll cause a storm just by coming through the path there. So they didn't necessarily have a lot of warnings in terms of a storm that was going to come. So it wouldn't have been uncommon to get caught and surprised by a storm
Yes.
in this body of water. In the Bible, and he said, the Amplified said, and suddenly, a violent storm arose on the sea, so that the boat was.
That's all the words Amplified has?
And suddenly a violent storm arose on the sea, so that the boat was being covered by the waves, but Jesus was asleep. And so if you look at how Matthew wrote that, he gave you a lot of emphasis on how serious it was, and background commentary said that these boats, the way they were built, a couple of feet of water would create a crisis.
Yes.
So it didn't take
Yes.
a lot of water to do that. So,
But
again, I have
the
this
right
flashback.
conditions.
So I started thinking about the ocean, like how much the
Oh,
waves.
yeah.
So when we start reading about waves, and you think about the ocean, you could have, waves 20 feet high, right?
But just think, just small waves. If you're in a small boat, whenever we were in Alabama a few weeks ago, standing on the beach, and during the evening, whenever the tides, coming in, those waves seemed to have more current or something in them, and to me, they were moving a lot of the ground. So it was a little more forceful than I was comfortable with, actually. So I can imagine when there's a storm, that's probably fairly unnerving. But then again, that's without Jesus.
Right.
That's without Jesus.
Well, they have Jesus here,
They have Jesus.
but they don't quite.
They don't
appreciate it.
That's
So-
right.
But again, the context it was talking about this is that we may have this visual of what a great storm looked like. We may have this visual of how much water is getting in the boat. But Matthew is just telling you it was a serious matter.
It was enough.
It was enough that their lives, they felt like their lives
It
were
was
in
enough.
jeopardy. And while they have all that fear going on, Jesus sleep.
Jesus was asleep. There's no need. Jesus, he created. He was there with God, creating everything. And whenever Jesus spoke and said, "Let us make man in our image," when you go back and study that, some people says the angels, some people says the various aspects of God, and that was Jesus was there then. Without him, there was nothing made. Everything was made. You have to go back and read the first chapter of John, and it really expounds upon that. Because the 25th verse says, "And his disciples came to him." Now his disciples came to him and awoke him. Jesus is asleep. I want to, I was wondering if it's like Jesus, if they really had to, if they just kind of, Jesus. Anyway, awoke him saying, "Lord, save us, we perish."
Now, for me, when I read that, I think about that in terms of, let me see how to say this. It's just like they didn't consider Jesus on the boat. I don't think their first action was to go wake him up either. The first thing you do is try to figure out how we can manage this. And Bible didn't go into that. But how do we manage it? What are our options? So at the point they're waking him up, they had run out of options. And now the serious is out of our hands. It's beyond our ability to manage. What are our options? Well, Jesus down there asleep.
And it's to the point of perishing. It's not that we're being inconvenienced. It's not that we're in have chances of being harmed. This is we have a chance of perishing.
Yeah.
Okay, and I like this. So in that 26th verse, and he said unto them, why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? We talked about that last week.
But before we go to just the 25th verse, the disciples woke him up, and the Amplified said, they said, Lord, save us.
Right.
We're going to die. So they were that blatant and to your point of the fear.
Yes. Okay. And he said unto them, why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? Last week in Matthew 6:30. So Matthew is emphasizing this lack of faith that's there in not just Israel, but among the disciples. Not just somebody random, but the disciples. Okay, O ye of little faith. Then he arose and he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. Now that's funny to me. He rebuked the winds and the sea. Is that a rebuke as in you shouldn't have been doing this, or is that a rebuke as in he just changed the course of things?
Well, I guess before I went there, my mind went to, he says, why are you fearful or why are you afraid? Let's start with that.
Okay.
Now, is he saying that because I'm on board? Or is he saying that because I said, let's go to the other side, and you should have known that if I said we're going to the other side, we will make it? What's in there that makes him say, why are you afraid?
Well, it certainly has something to do with their faith. So that from the scripture, I think he's kind of honing in on, you should have faith in me. You should have faith in this situation. You should, as Manfred said, trust the process. I think Matthew's really honing in on that. You're with Jesus. You're safe with Jesus. If you're safe with anybody, it's certainly Jesus. And if you perish, I mean, you're talking Jesus. Jesus can bring you back. He can bring you back.
Yeah, and I think as I think about it, it created this connection between two things that I think the casual reader may make that's not necessarily connected.
Okay.
Because then Jesus gets up and he rebukes the wind. So it could be multiple perspectives, right? Because it's like when he ceased the wind, it got rid of the fears, but it wasn't the ceasing of the wind that he wanted to manage the fears. He wanted their faith in him to manage the fears.
So he rebuked basically those with fear. He rebuked them with the fear. But the language carries on that he rebuked the sea.
The wind and the sea. And I don't think rebuke here, I think it's more of the command issue.
Right.
Than it is you shouldn't have done it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He just simply changed the course of things.
And I think that oftentimes we will consider this a miracle, but what he's doing is he's demonstrating his power and authority over nature. So Jesus uses situations and circumstances to teach multiple messages. One, you don't have any faith. The second one is, if you put your faith in me, I have dominion over nature. I have dominion over, you already seen that I have dominion over all manner of sicknesses and diseases. But now you're seeing I have dominion over nature, which in essence is just letting you know I am the Son of God.
Right, right. Whenever I read this, I think about how sometimes our tone and all carries over from one conversation to the next. I don't see Jesus like rebuking them, they turn around and getting onto the getting onto the sea and all. But he did change the course of things. And as you said, he used this, and then we get here to the 27th?
Yeah, before we go there.
Okay.
I guess when you were talking about that, it just came to my mind.
Let me get you some juice.
The Bible, you talked about this in terms of rebuking. And I'm not sure that there's as much emotion in this conversation.
as we tend
and we
to.
would tend to think, because we see again,
We-
this is one of those
yes.
situations where we put it in our culture,
In our language.
right, and we put it in our town as our study taught us. And so when you hear somebody, a parent rebuking a child, they don't always raise their voice. Sometimes you can rebuke a child without raising your voice.
Mm-hmm.
And if we consider Jesus being the master teacher, he's teaching in his tone as well as his words.
Have you experienced that? Not just the child, as an adult, someone rebuking you but never raising their voice, never challenging your position, that sort of thing?
I have, but most of the time, there's emotions on the other side that you pick up as much as the words, and then you have that fight flight type deal, which when if the
Right.
voice is elevated on one side, it tends to make you want to
Mirror, you tend to mirror.
react to that.
Yes, I have some people who are wise enough to, if they want to correct something or address something, may not even be a correction, but address something, that they're very tactful in how they present it, and it makes you more open to receive what it is they have to say. So if there's a correction, it makes it easier for you to go correct things. Like you said, if someone's in attack mode, the walls of defense a lot of times go up, and it's just something about it. Sometimes you can say, go left, and automatically a person wants to go right.
Yeah.
So it's we have to use wisdom. Apologize for the dogs. Okay, you 27 verse, or do you want to wait?
Let's see.
You have anything else to squeeze out of there?
Let me see. So let's consider that Jesus is not raising his voice. I'm not saying he is. The Bible doesn't tell us. But when you say rebuke, he gets their attention, because you got to keep in mind that Jesus is sleeping while it's raining.
Wait.
He's sleeping while the wind is blowing.
Wait.
And he's sleeping
When you say,
the rain, the wind, the waves,
Wait.
and the noise.
why are you fearful? Oh, you have little faith. That's enough right there. That's enough right there. I mean, Jesus marvels at some who come to him and they have faith, and there's no such faith there in Israel, like the centurion that came to him. Then you got those who are following him closely, walking by him closely, and whenever he says, oh, you little faith, look like to me that's enough right there. It's just like you tell a kid, I'm disappointed in you.
Yeah.
And they just,
And maybe he did. Maybe between the rain that was falling, the wind that was blowing, and the noise the disciples was making, maybe he had to raise his voice. I'm just offering that it may not have been with the emotions.
Yes, I
that
agree.
we
I
experienced
agree.
today.
I totally agree. I think just using certain words gets your attention. You don't have to have an inflection in your voice or anything. But at this point, Jesus could probably move his lips. They're probably reading what he had to say because they were afraid. They were afraid.
Now, this
Yeah.
strange question.
Okay.
Does this event happen at the night or in the day?
Let me go look at the other chapters. I always thought it was at night.
Well, a lot of times we tend to, and I guess it was, no. Anyway, just interesting place to think from.
I'm going to go back and look at that now because I always thought this story was, I know whenever he was walking across, that was night because they supposed he was a ghost, remember?
When Peter walked on water, that was probably at night. But this scene here, I'm just not sure. And again, this is one of those things that as you read the Bible,
But think about this: if there's a storm, it's blocking out the sun anyway, more than likely, right? So it may not be just pitch black, whatever, but could probably be dark.
Well, and it could easily be in the daytime. But the point of my question wasn't really to solve it as much as it was to create the spiritual curiosity. And see, one of the things that's happened in Christianity is that we read so much into things. And I think the Lord is calling us to a place now to say, I want you to stop making up stuff. And somebody may have got it and preached until you was night, and and the Bible may say, I don't know if it does or not. My point is, when you hear the story, you visualize something. Your mind goes somewhere. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying it helps to pause and consider some simple things. Was it night?
Well,
was it day?
They got to Jesus. They found Jesus on that boat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it was there was some light that was part of the vessel itself, or whether it was light enough to find him, locate him. I don't know.
Yeah, but keep in mind, this boat's probably no longer 27 feet.
Yes,
and 8 feet wide. So, and if it's that small, when people get on there, they kind of get in a space, right? So it's not like they're moving all over the place. So they probably
they knew it was Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
However they identified him.
I just want us to consider that, right? Because we read the story, and if we're not careful, we read so much in it that's not there.
Right.
Okay.
You ready for that?
I'm ready for the 27.
You sure?
I think I am.
There may be something else in that 26. Okay. But the men marveled, saying, "What manner of man is this?" And we need to always be there. What manner of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him?
So, okay.
Go ahead, go.
So
Jump right in
with
there.
the way Matthew writes that, it's like this happens just instantaneously. And I don't know if in actuality, again, I don't know. We don't know. All we got is the words, right? So when they go to wake up Jesus, how long does that take? I mean, because Jesus apparently had a conversation with him before he rebuked the wind, right? Before he rebuked them, and then he rebuked the wind. So they're waking up Jesus. Where is he at? What does he do? We know that he have a conversation with them, short, as it looks like they're in Matthew. Then he have a very short conversation with the wind. But for the disciples,
But he didn't have to say to the wind, "Of little faith." He didn't have to say that to the wind.
Yeah, and I think when someone said "peace be still," he simply said "peace be still."
He had control, absolute control of absolutely everything. And it's almost like all of creation respects God, except, well, I shouldn't say we don't respect him. We don't look at God as God in a lot of facets. But creation does.
Yeah, and then it says that when Jesus comes to see, he speaks to it. And if water's going all over the place, maybe it stops immediately. Maybe it takes a minute to die down. Who knows? But the next thing we get is the men marvel.
And actually, it seems like to me they had so many times to marvel, but this is probably the first time they've seen this event.
Can I say it a little differently?
Go ahead.
This is the first time they've seen an event where they have this much emotions in it. Most all the rest of them, they watching somebody else. Blind man getting healed, lame man, somebody dead getting raised. That's somebody else. But this me now. And so this, if you look at it, excuse me, Jesus' ministry, it was progressive.
Yes, for sure.
For sure. Like I think Sister Manfred mentioned the process. This is a multifaceted process as he's developing his disciples. He couldn't take them to the cross immediately. He had spent 3 years with them, getting them ready to get them to get ready for him to go to the cross. So all of this is a process. So when he's healing the sick, healing leopard, and he's doing all of these things, again, they have no emotions in that. Glad the blind man can see. I'm glad they got that miracle. But it didn't impact me personally, right?
So this was their opportunity to have their own testimony of who Jesus was. Now, unfortunately, this did not equate to "you are the Christ."
Right.
This did not equate to that, because later on, whenever Jesus is ready to go off the scene, he's asking, "Who do men say that I am? Who do you say that I am?" It's only Peter who had a glimpse, just a brush, an unction from the Holy Ghost saying that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. So they're still looking at him as a man instead of just, this is the Christ, God.
In fact, one of the commentators made the statement that he's one of greatest prophets that ever lived, or he's something greater than that. Let's take a pause here. Let's come back into it.
Okay. All right. Good deal.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap up to 27
Yes.
verses. So again, it says, King James says, but the men marvel, saying, what manner of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him? And again, I don't know what my mind is just in these weird places tonight. The men wondered in amazement. But who said this? What kind of man is this? Now,
Who said this?
The
What do you
men, the men wondered in amazement. All of them could have wondered that, but I don't know if they all said at the same time. What kind of man is this?
I don't know. They're probably all looking kind of like. Sometimes we don't verbalize it, but that's what we're saying.
But it said
Juice.
saying. They actually, somebody verbalized these words according to this. What manner of man is this? But again, this to your point that you made a few minutes ago. Man. What kind of man is this? So they still haven't gotten beyond the physical aspect of what's going on. So in fact, that's part of the trap, to say a man has the power.
And just think, Matthew, and well, all of them are telling this story. They are telling this story to a group of people of something that happened in time past. So at the point they're even telling this, they have the Holy Ghost. They have received the Holy Ghost. They know Jesus is the Christ, but they're telling what their walk was. They're telling what their experience was. And in some cases, they're sharing other people's experience because, Luke wasn't there and whatever.
Right.
So sharing other people's experience. Neither was Matthew in the inner circle, but he often talks about some of the things from the inner circle. So that's
So
what
again,
manner
as
of
you
man is
think
this?
about this, that as they marvel and as they wondered in amazement, somebody may have said it, but they all was thinking, "Wow, he just spoke to the wind."
Yes.
And
Yes,
the wind obeyed.
you know how we are. And then one of them looking that way, and the other one probably go, "Yeah, right, yeah."
Well, it could be like the dog chasing the cat. And what do we do now?
One dog starts, the other one's Jackson starts barking, and Bentley just gets roped into it. Like,
Go running like it's something.
yeah,
It's something.
I know. I believe him this time. Okay. Do you have any questions for this week, or do we want to go on?
Let's go on. I think. I just kind of say this as part of the wrapping up. As we see this happening at the Sea of Galilee, and when you follow, if you got a map, and I don't have any with me today, that will show you where Jesus' ministry took place, primary ministry took place. You'll see that most of it took place in this area right here. So this is a common place. The Sea of Galilee is very common. You see it throughout the gospel. And it's a place that culturally most everybody would have been very familiar with it. So when they just said the Sea of Galilee or the Sea of Tiberias, whatever they called it, all of those things would have been automatic.
Get somebody's, okay. Yes.
The fact that if you get on the sea, you're not necessarily anticipating a storm, but it could happen. And it may have happened before when they was on there. So, but again, a lot of that's just inherent in the culture and in the story. But what
All right.
wasn't natural was Jesus.
Jesus.
That was
Jesus.
Jesus makes the difference.
Jesus makes the difference.
Yeah.
So why are you afraid? When Jesus, now it's one thing for me to ask it, for a friend of yours to ask it, but when Jesus asked it, I mean, that's piercing. That should be convicting. I mean, there's a conviction right there. Why are you afraid? It's like, oh man, I missed that one. I shouldn't have been afraid there.
Yeah. And I think that's the opportunity as we look at this, is that look for Jesus early
Yes.
instead of late.
Yes.
Look for him before it gets bad. Most of the time, like it looks like, just me reading this, that when they woke up Jesus, it was kind of like the last option. And the Bible tells you about seeking
they were toast.
seeking the Lord early. Seek him early in
Right.
the morning. Seek him
Right.
early in situations. Seek him early in your circumstances. And if he moves on your behalf, just think about all the comfort and all the worry and the stress that you could avoid if you seek him early in situations. Okay.
Yeah, you have it.
All right. There you have it.
Well, look, thank you guys for joining us once again. We're going to tell you to hit that subscribe, hit the like, and hit the notification button. Hit that so that you're notified whenever we post to YouTube, our YouTube channel, and you're not left in the dark or wondering or see it 2 or 3 days later. We do apologize that we didn't have this out as early as we planned, but we're glad you joined us.
Amen. So hit those buttons, the subscribe, like, share, and give us some ideas on naming our micro gardens. So we thank you for joining us.
Yes.
We pray the favor and the blessings of the Lord be with you until we meet again.